Hello, I'm Helen Bradley. Welcome to this video tutorial. In this tutorial, I'll show you how you can create a Misty Mountain background effect in Illustrator. Before we get started with this tutorial, let's look and see what it is that we're going to achieve. I'm going to show you how you can create a Misty Mountain background, something like this, in Illustrator. To get started with our Misty Mountain background, I'm going to choose File and then New. I'm going to make this just a letter-sized document in landscape orientation and just click OK. I'm going to start by creating a rectangle that is the size of the artboard. So I'm just going to drag this out here. And I'm going to fill it with a pastel gradient. So I'm going to turn off the stroke. I'm going into the fill and I'm going to open up my pastel gradients. Now if I just click here, I can go to Open Swatch Library. I'm going to Gradients and then I want my pastels. These are shipped with Illustrator. It just makes it a little bit easier to create your initial gradient. So I'm just going to select one of these pastel style gradients, and I think I'm actually going to choose this one, and then I'm going to make sure that it's running down the rectangle with the blue near the bottom. Now if I want to make adjustments to that, I'm just going to double click on the gradient tool and I can make adjustments to the gradient. I just want to smooth this out a little bit, and I think I want to move blue down to the very end here. So let's just go get rid of our yellow, get rid of the blue from this point and here, and just move it to the end. So that's going to be my starting gradient. Now in the Layers panel, just going to try and keep the screen as tidy as I can because it's all going to get a bit ragged as we work. So I'm just going to lock this rectangle down and I'm going to draw my first mountain. So I'm just going to click and drag. I'm just drawing with the pen tool, so I'm not being very fussy at all about what this looks like. It's going to be way too big and that's just fine right now. Now I've switched to the direct selection tool. I'm just going to select on these points and just make sure everything is looking okay. This is a really nasty point that I've drawn here, so I'm just going to remove it and just even this out to a sort of smoothish shape. And if you don't want some of these points, you can just click on the delete anchor point tool and just click on the point to remove it. Don't click on it with the direct selection tool and press delete, because otherwise you just break your line at that point. You certainly don't want to do that. Now I've got my shape there. I'm going to go ahead now and draw a rectangle. I'm going to use the artboard as a guide here as to the size. And I'm making sure that my rectangle covers the very top of this other shape that I've drawn. I'm going to the selection tool, I'm clicking on the rectangle and the shape below so that both of them are selected, and then I'm looking for my Pathfinder tool, which has disappeared on me. So let's go and get Pathfinder, and we're going to need that repeatedly, so let's put that over here. And with these two shapes selected, I'm just going to click on Intersect. What that does is just gives me the intersection of that rectangle and this shape. Now before I leave this shape, I'm going to the Wrinkle tool. So this shares a toolbar position here with the Width tool, but we're going for the Wrinkle tool. So I'm just going to click on that. Now I'm going to double click on the Wrinkle tool to see the settings that I've got. Now I've got it set to 400 points. I think that's probably a bit big, so I'm going to set it to 300. For width and height, I've set the intensity to 10%. I have no horizontal wrinkling, but I do have vertical wrinkling. I have a complexity of 1, a detail of 2. I'm just going to click OK. Before I leave here, I'm just going to wrinkle this mountain, and you can wrinkle it as much or as little as you want. And when I'm done with that, I'm ready to go ahead and just fix the gradient on this. This shape already has a gradient applied to it, and this is the gradient down here. What I need to do is to darken this somewhat. So I'm going to go to each of the colors in turn, double click on the color to open this panel, and then I'm going to shift click because I want to get round to the HSB, because I just find that sometimes a little bit easier to work with, and I'm going to darken all these colors up. Now, I don't have to use the HSB. All I need to do is to make sure that every one of these colors gets darkened a bit. And now that I've done with that, before I lock this layer away, I'm going to go and select this layer, and from the appearance panel, which is over here, if you need to show it, choose window and then appearance. I'm going to click on opacity and I'm going to set the blend mode to soft light. And I'm going to just drag over to recreate my gradient the way I want it to look. And now I can lock down this shape. You can see that there is just a very faint change to the image. And then I'm just going to go and repeat this. Now I can repeat it one of a number of ways. Either I can go and draw it each time. So let's just go and get the pen tool and let's draw another shape here. Edit the shape just to make sure that it looks the way we want it to. At the very least, it must cover the bottom part of our artboard. I'm going to again select and draw a rectangle the size of the artboard. I'm going to select both shapes and then use the intersect option just to grab the piece that I want. I'm going back into the wrinkle tool. Just going to wrinkle the edge of this as much as I want it to be, staying away from the vertical edges because I don't want them to be wrinkled. Again, I'm going into the gradient because I need to fix the gradient on this. I need to make it darker. And then I'm going to set its blend mode over here in the appearance panel to soft light. Make sure that there's no stroke on this shape, and I can lock it down. Now I can also take advantage of the shape that I've just drawn and make it a little bit quicker to create the next shape. And what I'm going to do is to duplicate this. Now I'm going to duplicate it and flip it at the same time. So I'll choose Object, Transform, and then choose Reflect. I'm going to reflect it vertically, and I'm going to click Copy because that gives me two shapes. I'm going to size this one down. And you can see that we're getting that nice edge, and then I can change its gradient by making the gradient a little bit darker. Well, I can do that one of a number of ways. I can darken it up by perhaps just making it a shallower gradient here and taking advantage of this darker end, and perhaps even just darken this end up before I finish. So I don't have to redraw the gradient each time if I don't want to. I can just sort of half draw it. Now this layer can be locked down as well, so I'm going to lock down both of these. And I'm going to go back and draw another one, and this one's going to be a fresh one. Same process, draw the shape, draw the rectangle the same size as the artboard so that we can use it to cut this up. Select both shapes and use the intersect option. Go ahead and apply the wrinkle tool to the edge. Then go and fix the gradient. Now with this one I'm going to play with the gradient. I'm actually going to make it quite a bit darker, but really try and make it a bit orangey here. I might even take this middle stop out of the gradient. And then set the blend mode to soft light. Before I leave this one, I'm going to duplicate it. So Object, Transform, Reflect. Again, it's a vertical transformation. I want to make a copy of it, and then I want to size this down. So I'm going to the Selection tool, and I'm just going to size it down here. And then lock these down. Now another way that I can take advantage of something I've already created is to go ahead and do the same thing over again. So I'm going to select this topmost layer. I'm going to choose Object, Transform, Reflect. I'm just going to make a copy of it. So this is in actual fact identical to the one to above. But you know, if I stretch it out, it's not going to be identical any longer. And then I can go back with the Wrinkle tool and re-wrinkle it a little bit. Again, it's not identical any longer. This time I'm just going to cut the end off here. So I'm just going to make a shape over the top of the bit I want to cut, select the shape I want to cut away and the shape that needs the piece taken off it, and I'm going to choose minus front. And again, if I just size this down, and then we're just going to fix the gradient for this one, so I'll target the gradient tool and let's go in. I'm going to shift click on this to get to hue, saturation, brightness, because that just allows me to darken this off a little bit. Increase the saturation there. It's already got its blend mode set to soft light, so I can lock this down and the one before. Now I'm having a look at one of these pieces here and just thinking that it could be improved on. Well, I can easily isolate it here. In fact, I think it could be made into two. So I'm just going to duplicate this layer in a different way. I'm going to go to the top version and flip it. Object, transform, reflect. Now I've already made my copy, so I'm just going to click OK in flipping it, and I'm just going to size it down a little bit. I'm going to the one behind it here, and I'm just going to adjust the gradient here. Just going to darken it a little bit. And then let's go to this one, and I'm going to darken it a little bit as well. So there's my Misty Mountain background. So I'm going to lock down all my layers. Now if I want to adjust the color of everything, I can do so. I'm going to the rectangle tool and I'm just going to drag over here to create a rectangle that is the size of the artboard, and I'm going to fill it with a solid color. So let's just click on the solid color and I'm just filling it with a solid color. And now for the opacity of this layer, I'm going to select something here. Now one of the options is hue, and I can also decrease the opacity here to get some of the underlying color through. There are other options that I can use as well. For example, I can use color burn, and again I can adjust the opacity down to get a slightly different result. And you can experiment with others of these blend modes and see what effect you get. Now, having used the color burn blend mode, then I can go to fill here and I can just adjust the color and see if I like any of these results. And these are giving me different effects for my background. Now, some of these are nice effects that I might want to use, and others are not so nice, and I will just bypass those. I'm just going to turn off my color fill layer right now. I'm going back to my original document. I'm going to show you something else that you can do. I'm going to select this path here and I'm going to choose Effect and then Stylize, and I'm going to choose an inner glow. And I'm going to, in actual fact, use multiply on my inner glow, which means that I'm going to darken the edge of this shape, and I'm going to choose a sort of darker color. I'm going to turn my preview on. I'm going to increase my blur a little bit and just click OK. And then I can go back and do that to each successive layer. What that's going to do is just to darken up the very edge of the layer, and that's going to make the ragged mountains just a little bit more apparent. So there are a number of ways that you can fine-tune this effect, but now you know how to achieve it using Illustrator. I'm Helen Bradley. Thank you for joining me for this video tutorial. Look out for more video tutorials here on my YouTube channel, and consider subscribing to my channel and you'll be alerted when new videos are released. And visit my website at projectwoman.com, where you'll find more tips, tricks and tutorials on a range of applications including Photoshop, Lightroom, Illustrator and a whole lot more.